So as you all know, we're now approaching 1 year of the sports show.
Wow.
It seems like every show, we learn something new and interesting about our hosts, Donna and Arnie. And so we decided to take tonight to get to know our hosts just a little bit better. And Mackenzie and I have decided that we're going to shift the roles a little bit, and we'll take on the responsibility of Donna and Arnie. So Mackenzie, I'll turn it to you.
Thanks, Dan. So it has been a joy to work with Donna and Arnie over the past 20 sports shows. Yes, I counted. It has been 20 sports shows. And a lot of you have been here from the very beginning and have seen just how much the sports show has grown and evolved over the past close to a year, as Dan said. We started Maccabi USA at home in a time when we didn't know what the future would look like. And we were hoping that, our programs would be able to bring you some comfort and some consistency in your everyday life. With our fearless host taking the lead, present for conversations with top Jewish power players in the sports world, but also you're hearing their life stories firsthand, where the only thing that's separating you from them is the mute button. And we ask that you all please do stay on mute unless you are 102 years old and named Harold Smith. Anyway,
by the way, that's a very important rule.
Very important rule. But as Dan said, we're mixing things up tonight. We've got two of our very own power players as in their own right as our amazing hosts. And we're going to get to know Donna and Arnie more on a personal level about their very distinguished careers and why they are so passionate about Maccabi USA. Thank you again, everybody, for joining us tonight for this special edition of the Maccabi USA Sports Show. Dan, I'm going to send it back to you.
Thanks, Mackenzie. So we actually have a treat and a surprise tonight for Donna and Arnie.
Arnie, are you ready? You know what?
Now I'm nervous.
Yes.
Arnie,
so actually, Mackenzie and I will not be asking the questions tonight. We've invited a sports show regular to conduct the interviews on behalf of all of our audience. So the guest host is a parent and grandparent of Maccabi USA alumni, married to a board member. And so without further ado, I'd like to present my mother, our host, Julie Kurtz.
Okay, this is great. This might be very hard. Arnie, this could be very difficult by the way.
This is awesome.
Let's get the spotlight. Where'd she go? Great.
Joy, did you leave with
I'm
that?
here.
We'll get the spotlight on.
She's doing the whole interview. Look at her.
There we go.
Her hair is done. Beautiful, Joy. Way to go.
All right, we're all set.
So every other Tuesday for Mackenzie, 20 weeks now, for almost a year, Donna and Arnie have co-hosted Maccabi USA and brought you amazing Jewish guests from the sports world. However, Arnie and Donna, that's good. Donna and Arnie are our superstars. They are superstars in their own right. And so we want to learn a little bit more about them. And there are so many similarities between the two of you. You're both parents of, you're both Jewish.
Okay.
You're both Maccabi alumni. You're both parents of Maccabi athletes.
Yep.
You both played a variety of sports throughout your lives, and you've both dedicated yourselves, most importantly, to making the community that you live in and the whole world a better place. Arnie is married to his wife, Dr. Susan Fielkow, a pediatrician. Together they have 5 children, 3 boys and 2 girls, and most importantly, 2 grandsons. And Donna is married to her wonderful husband, MG, and has 2 stepchildren and twin boys. So let's learn a little bit more about them. And remember, you can ask questions by putting things in the chat. In preparing for this show, I went searching for information about you, Arnie. After reading about your distinguished career, what really stood out wasn't just your many accomplishments, and we're highlighting just a few of them on the screen, but what really stood out about you was the fact that you're a real mensch, that you really keep true to your core values in all aspects of your work. Currently, you're serving as the CEO of the Jewish Federation of Greater New Orleans. But of course, as people look on the screen, they can see that you've held many different jobs. Your commitment to people worldwide, to children, and especially to the underprivileged and to the Jewish community is so evident. But let's start at the beginning. So Arnie, as you often say on this show, let me take you back. The first question I want to ask, take us back.
This is so
and
adorable.
take us back and tell us a little about your childhood, about growing up in Jewish in Appleton, Wisconsin, and about the role of sports in your youth.
All right, Joy, thank you. Boy, this is a special treat, I have to tell you. Thank you for doing this, and it's nice to be with everybody and my normal co-host, Donna. I am so excited every week, every other week to be with you. Well, Appleton, Wisconsin is kind of the Mayberry of the United States. I had a beautiful childhood. Appleton is located in the central part of Wisconsin, about 10 miles from Green Bay. And I had a wonderful childhood. I don't know if my mom's actually on tonight. She said she was going to join, but my parents were terrific. I have a wonderful sister, and it was just a great childhood. We learned Judaism from my parents, but probably even more so from my grandparents, who had come to this country from Eastern Europe, and they instilled Jewish values and tradition and religion on us. They had to drag me to bar mitzvah training in Sunday school because I'd rather be on the basketball court, but I made it. I got bar mitzvahed and went on. So it was a great thing. And sports played a major role. You can't grow up in Wisconsin without being a Packer fan. That was a huge part of literally from the moment I was born until today. And it really goes through over many generations. It's amazing to have watched my 100-year-old grandmother every Sunday who came from East Europe, from Belarus, get dressed up in green and gold and watch Packer football and await our return from Lambeau Field to cook the meal for us. Those kind of memories you'll never forget. But sports played a major role. I was an athlete. I played high school basketball. I played high school tennis. Was fairly good at both sports, but nothing that was probably going to elevate me to a professional career. And it was a lot of fun. So, a wonderful childhood, great memories, and enjoyed it a lot.
That sounds terrific. I don't know enough about the Packer fans. We'll have to talk about that later.
Okay.
Although, Donna, you and I haven't met in person yet. Donna makes everybody feel like her best friend forever. So Donna and I have been besties for just about a year now.
Yes, we
It's
are.
been my good fortune not only to interact with Donna on this show, but also on her weekly show, Refresh. Donna is the CEO of Orender Unlimited, a really fitting name because Donna's energy and creativity is so unlimited. Donna also started Generation W, Generation Wow, has written a book, Wow's Jump. Donna approaches life with a truly refreshing point of view. A recent quote of hers really epitomizes her. Last week you said, "Being of service makes me feel better." And Donna is absolutely of service to her family, to her community, local and international, and to Maccabi USA. So we're going to talk a little more about your early years. You were born and raised in Long Island, New York. I hope your mom's on the show tonight. Is mom here?
Well, it's really interesting, Joy, but I had them come last show and they both fell asleep, mouths open, and I had to call Mackenzie up and say, Mackenzie, would you take their camera off? And so I kind of wish she was here, though. I wish they were.
And so if she were, she could catch us on stuff. But so you were raised in a conservative Jewish home. And you played sports as a young athlete. And you also played basketball in Elmont High School. And you were a 5-sport athlete in high school, lettering in field hockey, volleyball, softball, and tennis. So share with us a little about your early life in sports and where that love came from. And then tell us, there's a follow-up question, but we'll wait for the follow-up.
Okay, of course. First of all, I have to just say, I played 7 sports, Joy. I actually played 7 sports in high school. And you can imagine, and my parents weren't happy about any of them. So Arnie, I'm loving the vision of your angelic Appleton, Wisconsin childhood. But you can imagine 2 Jewish parents having a daughter wanting to play sports in a time when girls did not play sports. And matter of fact, here's a really good, I think it's a funny story now. I didn't at the time. But, I grew up in New York. So what did you do? You played stickball in the street. So I would come home from school when I didn't have practice and I'd play stickball in the street with the boys. And in about 6th or 7th grade, my father thought that was inappropriate for his daughter. And so he said, you will not play stickball with the boys. And I was like, okay, not really. And so I would play stickball with the boys until I knew exactly the sound of the motor of his car. And when I could hear it down the street, coming around the corner, then I would sit on the curb pretending that I was watching the boys, which, by the way, I was also a cheerleader in high school. So I played my basketball games on whatever they were, Tuesday and Thursday, and the other 2 days, and I could cheer for the boys. So I had to make sure I had it all covered. You know what I mean, Troy?
I do. So
Yeah.
I want to follow up, though. That playing stickball with the boys probably has a little something to do with the chutzpah when you decided you were going to play tennis in high school. Can you tell us a little about that?
Well, I maybe most people know. Oh my God, we found that! Look at me. I was kind of cute. So I played 6 sports, right? I did play all those sports. Plus, I ran track and I vaulted on the gymnastics team. Don't ask me why I ever thought I could wear a leotard in public, because I would never do it again. But I wanted to play tennis. My grandmother actually thought tennis was a more girl sport and that was acceptable. And so I wanted to play tennis. And I was a pretty good tennis player. Harry Hopman had started to scout me to play at the Port Washington Tennis Academy, which is where John McEnroe came from. But there was no team. I couldn't play at my school. Why? Because there was no girls tennis team. And I look back on this, and I did do this in my TED Talk, it never occurred to me to say, why is it like this? My response was, why not play on the boys tennis team? And so I approached my coach, who was a former Marine, had that crew cut. I always remembered his hair because I always thought if I put my hand on it, like it would probably pierce my hand because his spikes were so sharp. He had a real gravelly voice, and I went up to him and I said, Coach, I want to play on the boys tennis team. And God bless this man. Never, ever underestimate the impact we can have on kids and the opportunities we create for them. Because even then, all these years ago, he did not say no. He said, if you can beat Marty Porish, then you can play on the team. And I'm like, oh my God, this is unbelievable. Now, here's the problem. I really liked Marty Porish. Like, he was in my 14-year-old consideration set. And I had to make a decision, which, by the way, many of us do, I said, I just got to beat his ass. And so I met him on a Tuesday at 4 o'clock. We had to play 1 8-game set. And after an hour, I was a new member, the first girl in the history of Long Island, actually, to play on a boys team. It happened to be our boys tennis team. So it was fun.
Yes, but
that's my story, Joy.
Yes, but tell them the reaction of your school newspaper.
Oh, yeah, well, you just saw that. So, like, the bathroom wars that we have now, like 50 years later, is like, what about the showers? And I'm like, seriously? What about the showers? Everyone knew girls didn't take showers. We never even sweat.
So back to you, Arnie. You had a very interesting career. You went to Northwestern, you graduated Phi Beta Kappa. Then you graduated from the University of Wisconsin Law School in 1981, and you began your career in Chicago as a practicing attorney in a firm that you started. And it seems like you focused on sports law, so a lot of interest in sports all along the way. Then you worked for a number of sports organizations, the New Orleans Saints and the Southern League of Professional Baseball clubs. And somewhere along the way, all of a sudden, you pivoted from sports to politics. Can you tell us how you did that, what caused that, and then I have a follow-up for you.
Sure. Well, first of all, I was one of those typical kids that, you finish undergrad, you're not sure what you're going to do, so you go to law school. And I followed that path, and, I figured I went to law school, I better practice law for a few years. And I did that, but I always had this driving desire to be in the sports industry. And I was very fortunate to get a first opportunity about kind of 8 years into my law practice. And, from there, Donna knows this. Once you get into sports for that first job, that's the hardest thing. Once you get into it, if you have some degree of talent, you can move fairly rapidly within the industry. But I really enjoyed the career that I had. I happened to be in the right place a number of times when opportunities were being developed. And I would say that the pinnacle of my sports career, I think, people talk about Major League sports, and certainly the NFL is at the top of that ladder. But after the 1999 Saints season, where they went 3-13, and basically the owner fired everybody in leadership, I just happened to write a letter to the owner because I had known him from the baseball world. And I said, if by any chance you were interested in separating the football side and the business side, I would love to run your business side. And 2 days later, I somehow, I was shocked to get a call from the owner's representative. He said, can you come in for an interview quickly, fly to New Orleans and Texas for interviews? And 4 days later, I was the executive vice president of an NFL team. And that truly was a special moment. I will tell you, my dad was there at the press conference, and he was so proud of that moment. But it brought me to New Orleans, which is a city that I absolutely love. And, I think everybody knows New Orleans took a devastating blow with Hurricane Katrina in 2005. And there were some things happening with the Saints at the time that are now public record in terms of the ownership wanting to possibly move the Saints away from our city. And I just took a stand against that. And, although ethically it was the right stand, it was not the stand that the owner wanted to hear. And ultimately I lost my position with the Saints after Katrina. And we had to decide what to do as a family. Do I stay in sports, which meant moving away from the city that we love, or do we stay there and see what else might exist? And some very good friends gave me the best advice possible, which was, Arnie, you've always loved politics. New Orleans needs new leadership. Make a run for elected office. And I did so. And was fortunate to get elected. I ended up, it was a very heated election. It was almost like a national election because we allowed voters to vote anywhere in the country that they were living, and New Orleanians were scattered all over the country. So I campaigned like it was a presidential campaign. We went to multiple states and such, but I ended up winning. And I have to tell you, I will always say this, although I've enjoyed sports, I love it. I love what I'm doing now. There'll never be in a time of my life where those 6 years that I was in public service as the city council president after Katrina, there'll never be a more rewarding time for me professionally. And it's just cemented me to my city and, to growing it and bringing it back. And fortunately, our city has come back in a pretty strong way over the last 15 years.
My follow-up is to ask you this. How did any of your Jewish values influence the way you dealt with Katrina and what happened afterwards in trying to bring the city back?
It did. No question. It did. I was very close with the Jewish community here, and the Jewish values that have been instilled throughout my life played a major role. We had some really big decisions to make after Katrina. I mean, life decisions, existential decisions as to, do you bring everybody back in a city that had been devastated? Do you open every part of the neighborhood, every part of New Orleans to people that want to come back? How do you handle major changes and reform in a way that's sensitive to a community that was really hurting? all of those, I think, bring Jewish values into the debate and ultimately to the decision making. So I would say absolutely yes, Joy.
So Donna, in
Yes.
the meantime, you also were breaking all kinds of records. You were on the team that played the first women's game, Queens College versus Immaculata in Madison Square Garden. And actually, I'm not a big sports nut, but that was 1975. And I actually know about that because that was a big deal to some of my friends. Tell us about that.
That was actually it was really funny. Somebody sent me a clip yesterday. I got a clip from LinkedIn from this woman. She's a doctor, an African-American doctor, who said, "Hey, have you seen this?" I had no idea who she was. And I looked at it and it was a clip of my coach, who's in her 80s now. And there was footage of this game, which I had never, ever seen. And she told the story about our program at Queens College being one of the best in the nation. We were in the top 10 all 4 years, got a lot of attention, and Madison Square Garden called us and said, "Hey, would you be interested in playing?" It was the first women's game ever to be played, basketball game ever to be played in what we know, all deference to anybody else who thinks differently, but Arnie, we know the Mecca of basketball. It doesn't happen in the Garden. It just doesn't happen. Well, that's what you have. And we believe that as New Yorkers, by the way, of course.
Oh, absolutely.
Anyway, so I was a freshman. I was the starting two guard on our team. And there were 12,000 people at Madison Square Garden. I'll never forget this. And Helen Reddy was singing, "I am woman, hear me roar" in number. And I literally am on the layup line. I think I just turned 17, and I'm crying. And I can't even explain why. But it was, and we played the next year as well. But I always said, I dropped out of, I gave up an academic scholarship to the University of Chicago in order to play basketball at Queens College, right? And okay, so I gave up that degree, but we made history, and it was well worth it. Well worth it.
Wow. Yes, even the non-sports people who are from New York know if it's not the Garden, it doesn't count.
It doesn't count. Well, it counts sort of, but okay.
Yeah.
And I will say this, just to code it to that story, my really, really, really special thrill was not this last Christmas because we're in COVID. So the previous Christmas to COVID, my son Jacob was playing at the University of California. They played at the Garden. Wow. And my son got in the game and he scored. And so here we are, probably, I can say, well, what do you think, Arnie? The only Jewish mother-son team to score official points in Madison Square Garden.
Should we ask how many points each of you scored?
Well, he scored 1, which was all that it took to make the record books, right? But I played professionally at the Garden, so I had my chance to score more than 1.
We won't count that then. Arnie, you touched on this a little earlier. You made a decision to fight vigorously for something you believed in, keeping the Saints in New Orleans rather than making the move to San Antonio. And you knew that this could possibly damage your career. What motivated your thinking? And then if you could talk a little bit about what role does a sports franchise play within the community and why are they so important?
Absolutely. I think the answer to the first one is wrapped up in the answer to the second one. So let me, again, just bring you back because growing up in Wisconsin, is really special. I mean, you don't have that many sports teams and, there's a love affair between a whole state and a football team there. And I grew up in that environment. And when I moved to New Orleans, I will say that the only place that I'd ever seen where there was as much of a connection between sports and community was in New Orleans. I mean, the reality is since the Saints came into existence in the 60s, there has been a love affair between a city and a state and its football team. And so all of that played a role. And when Katrina hit, obviously it was devastating for everyone. And in fact, as the head of the non-football operation, literally in the couple days after Katrina, I had to get ready to bring an entire organization over to another place, which was San Antonio, Texas, because we had to get ready for a football season. We had to set up operations. We had to do everything. In the meantime, you know, what was left in New Orleans was not very pretty. I mean, and people, you know, that were scattered all over, the one thing that they held on to was the Saints. And I'll just say this very quickly. One of the greatest things that I've ever been involved in is our first football game in 2005. We were on the road in Carolina, and we got to Charlotte, to the stadium, and there was a big tent that we were going to sponsor for anybody that had come to the game from New Orleans. And there were hundreds of New Orleans fans who literally had nothing. I mean, they had no money, they had no clothes, they had no nothing, but they made their way to Charlotte for that game. And I was so honored, you know, to be representing a team with a community that needed so much. So fast forward a couple months, and again, this is all public record, but you know, there were a lot of efforts about the team potentially not coming back. And I just, you know, my feeling was, we just can't do that. You would devastate, you know, this isn't like the metropolitan area of New York where you have multiple teams and everything. If you take the Saints away from New Orleans, Louisiana, you don't have New Orleans, Louisiana in a big way. And, you know, and I just took a stand, and ultimately it was the right stand. Commissioner Tagliabue ended up coming behind that, not allowing the team to move. And, you know, the rest of the story is a great story, because a few months later, Drew Brees was brought into town. And a few years later, the first Super Bowl was brought to our city. So it was a pretty special moment. And, you know, I wasn't thrilled about losing my dream, but I'm certainly proud of the position I took. And I think other people in this community continue to respect that position.
I'm sure they did. We'll come back to the Super Bowl a little bit later too, Arnie. Donna, question for you. So you decided you were going to turn down a scholarship at college level, and then you decided to go pursue your master's degree at Delphi. And I'm really sorry your mom's not on here, because I got to ask her. After a year, you decided not to finish and to drop out so that you could play professional basketball. As a Jewish mother, I got to know what your mom said about that.
Listen,
And also,
Joy, to this day, I always have to say to her, Mom, you see, it worked out. It's not that bad. It's okay. It's okay.
well, can you tell us why that was the right decision for you?
Well, you know, it's funny. I remember my senior year in college, and I don't know how many of you would remember Phyllis George, but she was Miss America, and she was the only female sportscaster, right? She was on CBS. And we were a high-profile team, and she came to do a story on us. And so she came over to do an interview, and she said, tell me, what do you think about playing professional basketball? And I looked at her and I said, how would I know? It's never been part of my dream. It just didn't exist. It was never part of anyone's conversation. So lo and behold, I graduate. I'm not ready to graduate basketball. I hadn't played that long. I love the game. I still love the game. And for those of you who ask, I still love to play. And I do with my boys, who are very good about inviting me to play with them. So I'm happy about that.
Do they
anyway,
let
so
you win?
I go, huh?
Are they very good about letting you win?
Play. Not anymore. Not anymore. Up until a certain point. I mean, it used to be 2-on-1, me against them, and they would jump on me, and then I could still win. But those days are over. Those days are over. Anyway, so I graduated. I go to social work school. I figured that was my way to impact the world. And I get a call and says, we're starting a women's professional basketball league. Would you like to play? And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a dream. It's that dream I didn't even have. I would love to do that. So my first year in school, I would go to school. I would do my practicum. At that point in time, I actually was a student social worker, if you will, for a 9th grade girls, pregnant girls group out of Huntington, Long Island. I would then go sit in my car. I would do all my homework and studying outside the gym, and then I would go and have practice. And ultimately, I decided that I would only have this one chance to play professional basketball, but I could always go back to school, which I always thought I would have. And ultimately, you know, it's like funny how the world goes round. I mean, ultimately, I actually got a doctorate from Adelphi, but it was a gift. I didn't have to work for it. But that's why I did it. I said, this is my time to do this, and therefore I will do it. So I dropped out, and I haven't finished. But what I like to say, Joy, is I didn't get my master's, but I got a PhD in life.
For sure. And you've shared so much of that with folks. So Arnie, this is an interesting point. You're an avid sports fan. You played collegiate tennis. You were selected to the silver medal winning U.S. men's masters basketball team at the 15th Maccabi Games in Israel. And you're not only a Maccabi alumni, but the father of Maccabi athletes. Your son, Stephen, played baseball in I think it was the 18th game in 2009. And your daughter, Yana, played junior girls soccer at the 14th Pan Am Games in Mexico in 2019. Tell us a little bit about how has Maccabi influenced your life? What was it like to be at the Maccabi Games and in Israel with your son or family at the time? And then we'll talk a little more.
Well,
Mackenzie, I think we have a picture here.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Yeah, I was in much better shape back then. That was what was it, 24 years ago. Well, it's been a treat to be part of the Maccabi family, honestly, for, again, going now 2 decades and plus. You know, I had always wanted to play in the Maccabi. I will tell you, from a child, I had heard about the Maccabi, had always wanted to play in it, and it really took me to my master's age group before I actually even tried out. But to make the U.S. team in '97 was really one of the highlights of my sports career. And you know, we had tryouts in Long Island, over by the old ice arena. And the first day, I think I made 13 out of 14 shots. And somebody came up to me at the end of the first day of the tryouts and said, Arnie, if you're smart, do not take one shot tomorrow. Pass the ball. And that's what I did. And I made that team, and it was a great Maccabi. It was sad in many ways because for those that remember '97, that was the year of the bridge collapse before we walked into the opening ceremony. So we never had an opening ceremonies, but it was a special moment to play. And we should have won gold, to be honest. We had a great U.S. team, and we beat Israel during the preliminary round and got on the court in the gold medal game. And, you know, I thought we were playing an entirely new team. Israel brought a few ringers to the table that year. But that was great. And then I followed it a couple of years later. We introduced baseball into the Maccabi movement. I was the chair of, I think, the first Pan Am baseball at Maccabi. And then my son played, as you said, in 2009 in Maccabi, and my daughter played a couple summers ago in Mexico City. So it's really been a love affair. It's a wonderful organization, and Donna and myself, and I see Debbie and Marshall and all kinds of board members and professionals. We're doing everything possible, you know, to try to elevate the brand and make the rest of our country aware of this incredible organization. So it's a true love affair, Joy.
We're going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute too. But Arnie, I know most of the people on here probably know about the bridge collapse, but I know I don't know who all is on, but I had sent out some emails to people and said, come on and watch tonight. It's going to be terrific. So maybe you could just help for those folks who don't know what you were referring to with the bridge collapse at the Maccabi.
Yeah. I mean, before opening ceremonies, every country lines up in a holding area, you know, waiting to march into the stadium. And usually it's a few hours before, and it's done, at least back then, it was done alphabetically. I don't know if it is today or not, but the United States was at the back of the line because of the alphabet. And our entire delegation, we were dressed up, we were ready to go. We were so excited. You know, my family was in the stands. I mean, it was going to be an incredible moment. And, an hour or so before, we heard some, we were, again, very far back, but we had heard some things that that the Australian team, which was one of the first, I guess, to go over the bridge, that the bridge had collapsed over the river. And, unfortunately, there was loss of life and out of that. And to be honest, none of us really knew what had really happened. In fact, none of us knew what to do. And we ended up, all of us, after several hours, we made our own way back to the hotel, and I saw my parents and my wife, and, everybody thought, to be honest, it was a terrorist attack. That was the first reaction. And even the people in the stadium, I'm told, did not exactly know what had occurred. So, fortunately, I think the right decision was made to, honor those who had lost their life, but continue with the games. And they did so, and the games went on. But it was, one of those moments in Maccabi history that will always be etched in our memories for those that, were participating in it.
Sad.
For sure. Thanks, Arnie. So Donna, talking about being etched in our lives, you say, don't ask why, ask why not.
Absolutely.
So, and you break barriers. You served at the highest level in a male-dominated field. You were a senior executive for the PGA, you were commissioner of the WNBA, and I can't name all the other little acronyms where you've inserted a female point of view into a very male world. Can you tell us, how did your attitude of don't ask why, ask why not, how did that help you navigate this predominantly male-oriented executive level in sports?
Well, I think when you, why questions are not bad questions, right? But they force you to give you a whole rationale. But when you just say why not, it's very liberating. Like, why not do this? It gives you permission to take the next step forward. And if I had to think through the whys of everything of where I was, I probably wouldn't be moving very fast. And for those who know me, I like to move fast. And so for me, it was all about, like, why not? Why not ask the coach, right? Why not leave the school? Why not drop out? Why not pick up the phone when Adam Silver called me and said, will you come to New York and be the president of the WNBA? And there's every reason, other than basketball, truly, I love basketball, but I had spent 17 years in men's professional golf. I had permission to do whatever deals that I thought would be good. I worked with Arnold Palmer to Greg Norman to Tiger Woods. It was, and they were all my friends. It was great. But the idea about why not is, why not give back? Why not go to a place? I still feel to this day, I am everything I've been able to achieve through a sport, which is life, which I believe is a team sport. Actually, one of my teammates is on the phone. A couple of them are, but in particular, I know Barry Kleiman's on the phone. He's the one who taught me how to play basketball when I was 12 years old. That's when I learned how to play. I was at summer camp and he was the counselor and he taught me how to play. And then Evan Yedlowell's on the phone. He's just my lifetime teammate. And of course, none of this in Maccabi would have happened without Bob Spivak, who's also on the phone. But when I went to the WNBA, the idea of everything I am as an athlete was, people just didn't give a whole lot of care about women in sports. And it's interesting, all these years later, what have been the headlines for this week? It's about a pair of dumbbells and poor food in an NCAA tournament that generates billions of dollars in revenue, and somehow it's just not any way equitable. We're not even talking 50-50. We're talking about square meals and the ability to exercise, for elite athletes, right? So somehow we haven't done a good enough job yet. But that's why I went to the WNBA. I literally said, why not? And more so, I should do this. I should pay it forward. Even when all my friends could not understand why I would go from a place where I would negotiate billion-dollar deals and then I had to go dialing for dollars. But hey, listen, you got to get good at all the skills. So I took it. I took it on. That's why I'm here, Marshall. Got to help dial for those dollars.
For sure.
Tonight, did you tell everyone tonight, Joy, we're having a telethon at the end of the event?
I will be glad to bring that up soon. I'm good at fundraising, Donna. That'll be my next segue. Arnie and Donna, I wanted to ask both of you, and you can just jump in and answer. Arnie, in your case, are any of your other children involved in sports or politics? And Donna, in your case, how about you?
Well, of my 5 children, so my oldest son is an attorney in Brooklyn, and he works for BetMGM, which is one of those new companies that's involved in the sports betting, and he's staff counsel working in sports. So he's he followed my career in many ways. He wanted to be in the sports industry, but he actually wanted to be on the legal side of the sports industry. But no, my other son is I have a second son who's a lawyer. I have a third son who's about to become a doctor, and then our girls are younger. And my oldest daughter Yana is a freshman at Oberlin College and playing college soccer there. So she's involved in the sports area as well. But all of them have some element of sports. They couldn't have grown up in our household without having some sports affection, even though their mother, who's sitting to my left here, tried to sway them in the wrong direction, because she had never, I have to tell this story because she's listening. Here I grew up entirely in a sports world, as from a kid all the way to college. And I met my wife my senior year, her junior year. Now, I asked her, have you ever gone to any sporting event at Northwestern? He goes, I've never gone to a football or basketball game. Now, she has spent 3 years on campus. How could that happen? But she says she spends it in the library becoming a doctor. But
if she went to a school like when I was at Temple University, it's because they never won a game in the 4 years I was there.
But Joy, unfortunately, Northwestern never won a game during my college career. So,
and Donna, how about you? I know one of your sons is involved in something.
Yes, I'm going to show you a picture that I just got recently. But did Danny tell you not to ask about my Maccabi experience? It's because
no, that's the next question.
Because it was kind of like
wait.
Debbie Adams,
Donna, I am not a professional. I have questions and they're listed in order. Don't jump ahead.
I got this 2 weeks ago. This is Jacob, as you can read, Orender's jersey, number 10. Playing for Migdal Amek, currently the #1 team in their division. He had a fantastic Maccabi experience. Both my boys played Maccabi basketball. Zaki is now Wolf Mason. That's his stage name, and he's a musician, but both my boys played basketball. And for those of you who don't know, my husband is a professional golfer. And so everyone's like, okay, well, how did that happen, right? Most boys will go play golf. They both play golf, but in our family, they play basketball. So what can I say?
So I think we'll switch up the order now, since Donna is so eager to talk about Maccabi. We'll get to our Maccabi question.
Okay.
And we do have a picture, I believe. The Maccabi organization is obviously a major part of your life. There you are, number 4, correct?
I am number 4. Oh, I have never seen this picture. That is so amazing. I'll tell you, I do keep this. I should have sent this to you guys. I do keep this right by my desk. And I can see it.
Yeah,
That's my team.
Wow.
And I keep, literally, here I am, all these years later, and I just keep it right here.
Yeah.
The things that matter are close.
In 1985, Donna, you were the captain of Team USA women's basketball team at the 12th Maccabi Games. You were captain of the Open women's basketball team at the 12th game, and your sons were both Maccabi athletes. So tell us, what does it mean to you to be a multi-generational Maccabi family?
Oh, well, first of all, it's amazing, right? I mean, the family aspect of being in the Maccabi movement means probably way more to me than me playing, although it never would have happened without me playing. I had to do that first. Unlike Arnie, I never heard of Maccabi. I don't even remember how it was, but by the time I was already working, I was in the workforce. I had stopped playing basketball, and someone said, hey, have you heard about this Jewish thing? And you could play basketball and you could wear a uniform that says USA. I'm like, I have to do this. And for those of you who heard me, what might have heard me tell the story was, I went to my boss and said, listen, I really want to do this. It means the world to me. And I'm going to be away 3 weeks. And he said to me, no, you can't do this. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, if you go, I will fire you. And I had to make a really significant decision in my life. I loved my job. I was working for the PGA Tour Productions in New York City, right? This is an amazing job. And I finally decided that I never wanted to look back and say, I missed something. I really didn't want to look back and say, I'm sorry I didn't do this. And I really felt that I would have. And so I told him, I said, listen, I will work here as hard as I can for as long as I can, but I am going to go do this. Why not do this, right? And so I did. I made the team. And it's funny because my coach at the time, he just recently passed, the beloved Howie Landa, was my professional coach. I played for him for the New Jersey Gems, and we stayed friends until he passed. I love this man. And we had an amazing experience until the very last day. Now, Debbie Adams, do you know this story? Do you know the story? You don't know the story. Okay. I'm going to tell as quickly as I can, but it really does. It's better with drama. But we play the Israelis. We split 1-1. We're going to play for the gold medal. And I'm walking in the kafar, and my coach sees me, goes, oh, well, ask Donna. She'll know what to do. And I'm like, okay, wait a second. I came here to play. My parents are here. I'm here. Donna, just want to let you know, the Israeli women are very upset that they're not playing in a big arena. The men are playing in, I don't know, wherever we were, but the women, we were playing in a high school for our gold medal. And therefore, they are boycotting. Bob Spivak, do you remember this? Bob Spivak, I thought he was going to have a heart attack, him and Alan Sherman. So they take us on the bus, and all of us are on the bus, and we're having a powwow. What are we going to do? Are we going to honor these women? All we had to do was walk out onto the court. If we put our toe on the court, we would get a gold medal. And times now it's like, tick, 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 tick. And you look out the windows and the guys are all going like this. And I'm thinking, my parents just spent $10,000 to come see me play. What are we going to do? And you know what we did? We decided that the gold medal really wasn't worth it. If the other women felt like they were not being treated well, it would be an empty gesture. And so we forfeited the game. And it's funny, I'm now actually in touch with some of my teammates. I'm actually investing in one of my teammates' businesses. What are the odds of that? Jill Oser. And we're talking about that. She goes, we all have to get together. What were you thinking when we didn't get off the bus? And I said, didn't I ask you? And she was 18 years old at the time. She goes, no, you never asked me. I said, we should probably get together and talk about this after all this time. But 25 years later, this is a true story. I am sitting as the commissioner of the WNBA in my seats at Madison Square Garden. And a woman comes up to me and she looks at me and she says, Donna, in her Israeli accent, which I recognized, you may not recognize me, but I recognize you. And I will always, always be thankful to you for what you all did.
And I think,
it just raises the question about what are the games really about at the end of the day?
And I think, folks, what it also shows is what I said at the beginning, that we have two folks here who are such mensches that they do the right thing, even when the right thing may not be the comfortable thing.
But Joy, you have to understand, we're also punished. They didn't have women's basketball for the next things. No one was happy. No one saw the light about this. This was like, we were like renegades activists. Like, how dare you? And now, obviously, this year again, we're hoping to bring 3 women's teams to Israel for 2022. I'm happy to be the chair once again. But I will tell you, right, Bob? It was, but it was the right thing to do. It was the right thing.
And you'll be in a big stadium this year, Donna. We'll see to it.
Well, all I want is coverage on Facebook. That's all I want.
Okay. So I can make that happen too. I know somebody at Maccabi.
Okay.
So, right, Marshall? Is Marshall here somewhere? So the last question I want to ask of both of you. You've both been involved for many years now with Maccabi in a variety of ways, but you are one step beyond so many of the others because each of you has a special initiative that you're leading right now? And I'll ask Arnie you to speak about yours first, and then Donna. You're working now with a program with Maccabi called the Athlete Ambassadors Program. And I'd like you to tell us, you focus so much on working with youth and giving back. And now you're bringing that philosophy and that concept to Maccabi. Tell us about the program and tell us how we can help.
I
In
will.
3 minutes or less, because I need the other 3 for
Okay.
Donna.
Well, first of all, I've had 3 big projects in the last couple of years. The best was being the chair of the search committee, hiring a great CEO, Marshall Einhorn.
Oh, Arnie!
Number
Way to
2,
go, Arnie!
We just finished our strategic plan, and hopefully that's going to be a blueprint for the future. And the third one is this ambassador program that part of the Maccabi next summer, on probably Love Day, we're going to do a series of sports clinics around the state of Israel, not only to teach the Israeli kids about, on the court sports that'll be taught by Maccabi athletes and coaches, but also some off the field help and giving them good messaging from the Maccabi movement. So very excited about bringing that grassroots program in a formal way to the Maccabi. And Donna knows this is something that, sports leagues do when they come to all-star games and Final Fours and other things. So we're now bringing it to the Maccabi, and I think it'll be very exciting. So what you all can help with is, number one, we need to raise money. So write a check to the Maccabi organization. That's the first way you can help. And then number 2, if any of you are interested in helping on that project, I have a great coach here with Sherry Lovin, and we'll be happy to figure out a way to get you involved.
Fantastic.
Now, Donna, you on the other hand,
Yes.
have also been looking out for youth and young people. And now you're bringing your love for young women and helping them to Maccabi. And you're leading the Women's Leadership Initiative. Tell us about that.
Well, I'm going to tell you about that. But first, Arnie recognized hiring Marshall, but I want to recognize our team with Arnie. Because they're now entering the time. I can see Steve Graber, I see Shane, I see Danny, I see Mackenzie. Who am I missing, guys? Oh, I saw Julie, right? Okay, I just want to say, this is Team Maccabi USA, and they're going into the heavy lifting. So we want to thank you for that. So listen, I'm a big believer that sports is not only a great equalizer, we could be better at that, but it's just one of the greatest things that we can all participate. You don't have to be an elite athlete to love sports or benefit from them. However, historically, as I have lived and we continue to see, women haven't had the same access. And when we look at the numbers from Maccabi, both in leadership, although I have to say Jeff's done a good job. Deb is our co-chair for the games in Israel, along with Tanya for 2022, which is great. And Tanya and Summer and I were co-chair. We supported Tanya in Mexico City. Girls and women being, especially Jewish women, there's just not a lot of us. I talked to Alana Kloss the other day, and she goes, "You're part of the tribe." I'm like, yes, there's so many of us, aren't there? And they're not, but there's more and more and more girls participating. So I thought that for us at Maccabi USA, working closely with Mackenzie, my partner in crime here, we're going to launch Jewish Women in Sports, a leadership forum that will be able to create community, continuity. We can learn together, we can lean on each other, and we can build skills and influence and leadership that can make a difference, not only in the USA, but I tend not to think too small, but ultimately the world. And so we're going to have our first meeting. Actually, all women are invited. This is not to be exclusive, but maybe on this night, what is it, April 26th? April 23rd, April 22nd. April 22nd. On April 22nd will be our first meeting to kind of talk about what it's going to look like moving forward. There's several areas we can look at in terms of deepening engagement of sports of women, not only in the US, but around the world. There's so many cultural impediments. And if we want to grow sports, we have to make sure that we have women and girls to compete against, and also how we're going to build our team here. Just in terms of community. And I'm really excited about this, as you could tell, Joy.
And we're excited. Before I ask you both the last question, I want to say that when I was in Cuba 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, I went to the Jewish synagogue there, and I met with the woman who was in charge. And it turns out that she was very excited when I said that my son was part of Maccabi. I saw some button or something of hers, and she said yes. And then we had a girls team, and they competed. I think it was in Brazil in the games. And interestingly, I had forgotten this until now. The reason they were able to compete was some sports team in New York gave them the money. They had no money for they had no money for even for uniforms, and a sports team.
I think the Tishes supported the Cuban.
Yeah, so very exciting to think that Maccabi can be
right.
For women all around.
Joy, we do also have Ari Ackerman on the phone, by the way, part of the management group that hired Miss Eng, like the first baseball general manager in the history of baseball. So that's pretty cool.
Wow, thank you, Ari.
Do you think she'll become an honorary Jewish sportswoman, Ari? We'd love to include her in our group.
I'll work that. That'll happen.
Absolutely. So the last question, and we have, if we're going to keep to our time, we have 2 minutes, so you two can fight it out. You've done this show for almost a year, Arnie and Donna. What's it like hosting the sports show? I
think we should ask you that, Joy. I think you should take the last 2 minutes and tell us how your night went. Arnie, is that okay?
Joy, I'll just say this very quickly. It has been a true honor and privilege to work with my friend Donna. She is the very best. She's not only a great athlete, a great leader, but a great person. And it has been really fun. And, you know, let's hope we get out of COVID soon, everybody get vaccinated, but let's figure out a way to keep the Maccabi Sports Show going for years, because it's been a true joy to be part of it.
I agree with everything about Arnie, but I substitute Arnie's name where he put Donna, okay?
Here, here. Well, I will take the last half a minute of my time to say that I do want to thank Maccabi. I had the honor and pleasure of going to the Maccabi games in Israel. I don't know how many years ago now. I've lost track of time because COVID took a year away, but was it 2 years, Dan? And went with Dan and with my granddaughter and grandson.
2018,
who both played soccer there. It was my third time in Israel, but it was very different, the most inspiring. I can't wait to go back in 2 years. I haven't figured out what I want to do to help when I'm there because I'm so damn old and slow that I can't keep up, but I'll figure something out. But I definitely think if you haven't been, you need to go. And if you haven't done anything with Maccabi and watching it, it's like nothing you can ever imagine. With that being said, you asked what it was like to host tonight. It was an honor to host both of you, but I have to really give a lot of credit and thank Mackenzie and Dan who worked with me and helped me prepare. So we hope we've done
everybody, let's hear it for Joy. Woo! Awesome.
You're too
did
sweet.
Great, Joy. You were,
Hey, I love you, Barney.
And Mackenzie,
and thank you so
Dan,
much.
every week you guys make us look good. So thank you for what you do.
And I wouldn't be here without you, Robert. You know that.
We'll be back, Donna. We'll be back in 2 weeks.
Oh, we will. Okay, what are we doing, Arnie? Do we know
in
yet?
our traditional role? Hopefully, we're finalizing it, but we're going to have a special show in 2 weeks. Hopefully, coming from Israel.
Oh,
wow.
That's right.
Well, we won't give you too much yet because we got to finalize a couple things, but should be great.
It will be great, Arnie. It will be great.
Everybody enjoy the Final Four on the men's and women's side.
That's right. And it's Passover.
We'll be on the day after. No, actually, when is the women's Final Four championship? Is it on the Tuesday or the Sunday now?
Sunday the 4th.
Sunday the 4th. So, and then the men's are the next day, and then the Maccabi Sports Show follows on Tuesday. So, you know, go whoever you're cheering for. My bracket is gone, so I don't even know what to do anymore. I can't predict anything, but enjoy the last couple weekends of the tournament. And Ari, for those that like baseball, and I know we got Pearl is here and Ari's here. You know what? Baseball starts a week from Thursday. So that's going to be really fun. And can't wait for MLB season to begin.
And happy Passover, everybody. Aziz and Pesach for everyone.
Absolutely. See you guys, couple weeks.